Welcome, everyone. My name is Larry Parman with the law firm of Parman Easterday. And we're a firm that specializes in estate planning, elder law planning, business transactions. So I have a special guest today, Carol McKenney, who's a fabulous paralegal in our office, and I are going to talk about some of the issues that our clients are confronting today and facing today. And not just the client, but the family itself. And more specifically, I'm talking about the challenges with preparing for and dealing with long-term health care, and specifically nursing homes, nursing home costs, expenses, and so forth. But even beyond that, we'll broaden the conversation a little bit based on Carol's experience and what she's seen clients have to deal with in our office through many years. So Carol McKenney, welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. So let's just start out and just share a couple of experiences with the audience of what you've seen occur in our families when they're dealing with long-term healthcare issues and other challenges that they face from time to time.
Yes. So, maybe 2.5, 3 months ago, we seem to have had a run of families coming into the office with emergency needs, or what we call crisis planning in our office, because of someone being diagnosed with a terminal illness and or needing to have that emergency power of attorney to help a loved one. And it seemed like there was just this barrage all of a sudden. And we had several conversations about how, unfortunately, what could have been a pre-plan for families turned into crisis planning. We just recently had a wonderful mother and daughter who were coming in. Again, it was somewhat of a crisis planning, but unfortunately, the mother passed away before we could even get the paperwork done. So now, instead of the planning, rather it be pre-planning or crisis planning, it's probate.
So no planning.
No planning. No planning equals probate.
Right. For the most part, that's true. So we had another case, and that's one instance. It's good to kind of set the context here. Carol mentioned both pre-planning and crisis planning. So when it comes time to dealing with long-term healthcare issues, too often people wait to the very end. So that's when Carol or I receive a phone call, and the message is, hey, it's Thursday afternoon and mom's going into their nursing home on Monday. What can we do? How can we minimize our exposure? How can we reduce expenses? How can we protect some of the assets and so forth? That's a crisis plan. On the other hand, some clients come in and they're thinking ahead. They're a little more strategic in terms of their approach to planning. They think ahead, and thinking ahead in this case is extremely important for one very critical reason. Before you can remove assets from being subject to the spend down rules required by Medicaid, required to qualify for those benefits, it requires that assets be set aside or transferred prior to 60 months. It's called the look back period. 5 years, 60 months, many of you are familiar with that. That used to be 3 years, now it's 5 years. So people are thinking ahead. They're moving assets into special Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. After 5 years, those assets are off the table and no longer subject to spend down. So that sets the broad-based picture. So Carol, any other examples of what you've seen, what you've experienced?
Well, now you're talking a little bit about the Medicaid trust that we sometimes do. And it's important to understand that, again, in that crisis mode of how to protect our assets. They want it protected today, the day that let's sign the papers. And then now all of mom and dad's assets are protected. And unfortunately, that's not the way it works. It is 5 years. And if you have a situation in a family where you know that there may not be those assets available to take care of mom and dad in the nursing home at $7,000 a month or more, then start looking at that plan before mom and dad are going to need it. 5 years comes and goes pretty quickly. And so, yes, I think that we've had some people come in, and we had a couple just not too long ago. They were in their early 50s and they were already creating their MAPT, their Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, knowing that they wanted their only child, and they just had the one son, to have the assets that they had worked so hard for their whole lives. And they wanted those things protected. So yeah, that was an experience with a younger couple.
Right. So people are starting to think ahead a little bit. And all of this is occurring because many of us did not want to spend the money to buy long-term healthcare insurance when it was more affordable. Long-term healthcare insurance is priced based on two things only: age and health. And so when we arrive at that older age, it becomes very expensive, and we kind of back away from that, which is somewhat interesting to me because we're willing to pay quite a bit of money for insurance to protect our home, even though for the most part our home doesn't burn down. But boy, when it does, we want to be sure that insurance is in place. I think people, to some extent, have their head in the sand about nursing homes, because when we do our programs, if I ask people to raise their hand if they're going into a nursing home, nobody raises their hand.
No.
Right? Yet statistically, we know that a large percentage of us are going to have a nursing home experience whether we want it or not. So reality sets in too late. And then people are scrambling and trying to figure out how to protect assets, or do they have enough assets to private pay and take care of the cost themselves? Because there are limited ways you can pay for long-term healthcare insurance. And I want to make it clear, don't depend on Medicare to do that. There may be windows of opportunity for short-term Medicare benefits, but you should not rely on it for a long-term payment plan to cover your long-term healthcare expenses. Medicare is a health insurance program, not a nursing home program. I also think, Carol, didn't you mention that this is a little bit apart from long-term healthcare, but I think you also had an experience recently where, in the case of that lady that passed away before the documents were signed, wasn't there an issue with a deed?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So the mother and daughter, just a few years ago, had created their own deeds, which you can print them off of a website, and they had handwritten it in and conveyed it to themselves with the language of and/or, and/or. No joint tenancy. So now they're probating those deeds, and there are 3 of them. So when someone comes in and we initially discuss with them deeds, and it's usually Maris and myself who work real closely with doing a lot of deeds in the office, people balk. They think, oh, $350 to do a deed? I can do that myself. Okay, well, let's see how that works out for you. So now what would have been a $350 deed is going to be a $5,000 probate
At
for
least.
some land.
Yeah.
And on that subject, something similar, we had a client just recently who, what the average American would consider to be quite a large estate. And they're not letting us do the deed. They're going to do their own deeds, several, including mineral deeds with, long legal descriptions. And okay, well, you want to, if that's where you want to save $350, but gosh, this situation that we're going to have to deal with now, it's unfortunate. And she's such a lovely daughter and loved her mom and is grieving. And this is just a real, hit to her that now she's going to have to probate all of these things.
We have an issue from time to time, don't we, with people want to save money. We get that. We think that's wise. But we need to be thoughtful about where we choose to save our money. So, sometimes my grandfather used to say, easy now, hard later, hard now, easy later.
Right.
So I can almost guarantee that in that case you described, we had a lengthy conversation about this when the clients were retained. And they can do it themselves, but I promise you there's going to be a mistake. There's just going to be a mistake. And we want to be, and they are taking responsibility for it. I mean, they had to sign off on it and they had to agree to do it. And so again, this is an area, estate planning and everything related to it it's so important to get good professional help. And even though you can do something yourself, doesn't mean that you should.
All right.
Because it's not what we know that matters, or we think we know. What really matters is what we think we know that we don't know. Or we don't know that we don't know, even though we may think we do. So all of us fall into those mental traps that can end up costing us more money long-term than the investment required to fix it right the first time. So
Yes.
So we could go on and on, but we want to be courteous to our listeners today. We don't want to take their entire day. So any closing comments you'd like to make, Carol, before we sign off?
Oh, I think that, you cover everything so eloquently, Mr. Parman. It was a joy to visit with you. And if our listeners out there would like a free consultation, it is a free consultation to learn something.
Well,
So
thank
we
you for being here.
invite them in.
You do a great job with our clients. We love you being with our team, and want to thank you for being here. I can't leave without telling everybody that the background they see is real. I've read every book cover to cover in the library. Maybe I should tell them that our staff's read all those books together.
We have read them together, yeah.
Then my credibility would be completely gone because that's not true. So just for the record, I have no idea what that picture's from or where that library is located or what those books are. But
Well, it's got a beautiful ceiling.
It is a beautiful ceiling, no doubt about it. So
Thank
anyway,
you, everyone.
yeah, Carol, thank you too. We'll sign off. You guys have a great day. Take care.
Bye.
Larry Parman signing out.